Now, if you're not ready, then go ahead and just tell me you're not ready.
I object to you getting records. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives.
I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not a lawyer, but
The Debrief.
hello, and welcome to another episode of I'm Not a Lawyer, But.
The Debrief.
I am Melanie, aka I'm Not a Lawyer, But, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Gooseby. How y'all doing?
We are not lawyers or legal experts, but we have this podcast where we talk about legal things. Sometimes we have legal experts come on, and sometimes we have people who have been a part of the judicial system also come on and talk to us, do interviews, all of that. And so that's what we are going to be doing today. We have a very special guest that we are so excited to have with us. His name is Jimmy Soto. And he has the unfortunate title, and let me just, I want to tell you the correct way to say it because it's not a title anyone would want to have, but he and his cousin have the title of, they hold the record for longest wrongful conviction sentence served in Illinois' history. And so the short way of saying that is that Jimmy and his cousin were incarcerated for 42 years. And after 42 years, they were exonerated. They were found to be wrongfully convicted. They did not do the crime they were convicted of. So we are going to have Jimmy and his attorney, her name is Lauren, join us to talk about his case and what that experience was like. We are so excited to have Jimmy Soto and Lauren, whose last name I won't mess up because I'm scared to butcher. But we are so excited to have you guys. So thank you for joining us for
joining
this
us.
conversation.
Sarah, what's your last name?
Lauren.
Lauren, I'm sorry.
That's okay. My sister's name is Sarah, so that's interesting.
Okay.
Myers-Muller is the last name. It's hyphenated, very long and annoying. So,
So thank you for joining us again. I want to kind of jump right in, and I feel like a great place to start would be, Lauren, if you can tell us a little bit about obviously who you are and what you do and the organization, like specifically that you work for, which kind of led to you meeting Jimmy.
absolutely. So, like I said, my name is Lauren Myers-Muller. I am a senior staff attorney at the Exoneration Project. So we are an innocence organization based in Chicago. We have a clinic out of the University of Chicago Law School. So we also work with students and teach students about wrongful convictions and the causes and everything like that. But we represent people who are innocent, who are claiming innocence. We do investigations into it. We get experts. We write petitions explaining to the court why the person is innocent, what the new evidence is, why their constitutional rights were violated. And we also will do appeals if we lose. We do clemency petitions if that's what's best, or if we get to that point. And we will do federal habeas claims if we get to that point too. So really the only requirement for us is that it be someone who is claiming innocence, and that there be something that we might be able to do to help. And so Jimmy's case was so interesting how it ended up getting to us. It was actually during COVID, and we had some success in getting some clients out on kind of compassionate release, clemency through the governor's office. So commutation because of the COVID issues and for people who were particularly likely to be affected by that. And that's how Jimmy came in contact with us. He'll talk about this, but his cellie, his cellmate in prison at one point, is this amazing man who I had already known, love him. He was not one of our clients. He was one of Jenny Bonjean's clients. But he put me and Jimmy in contact for the clemency for Jimmy. So that's how we initially met. But as I was reviewing the case, so it was for something very limited, getting in touch with the governor's office, but his case was actually on appeal at the time. And so as I was looking into that and looking into those issues, I was shocked just generally by the facts of his case. He'd been in for so long on such slim evidence. I mean, no evidence really. It's one of those cases where I feel like today he would never be convicted on that evidence. But it was the early 80s and things were so different in Chicago, all over the place in the legal system. And I went to our appellate guru in our office, Deb Lovey, who does all of our appeals, basically. She's a genius with them. And I said, Deb, you have to look at this case. This is crazy. Look at what has happened here, which I'm sure we'll get into. Can we help with the appeal? And she took one look and she said, oh my God, absolutely. Took over the appeal, did an amazing job, won the appeal, got us sent back to court. And then we ended up winning in court. Jimmy was fully exonerated in the middle of our clemency process. So it moved into
so that was still going in addition to the, okay.
Well, got him out, and that's all that matters. Got him out actually the better way, where he doesn't have it on his record. But it was one of those things where you just look at the case and you're just appalled at everything that happened, and you just want to figure out some way to help.
Yeah. And how long have you been doing this work?
I've been doing innocence work since January 2016.
Oh, wow.
So, oh my gosh.
10 years.
10 years. That's crazy. I didn't even realize that until you asked. I'm so glad you asked. It's a nice little anniversary.
Yeah.
And I've been at the Exoneration Project since 2019.
So if a inmate doesn't have a cellmate like Jimmy did that knew you, how do you come across their case? Are you just cherry picking it out of the files and reading and going from there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have just regular intake where people can apply, and we go through those and we see who has, a good claim, who's claiming innocence, where there might be something we can do. But it is hard. I mean, it is kind of like what you're talking about. You're just reading through. We often will talk to the person before we make a determination, but not always. But then sometimes it's another lawyer will reach out to us and say, I had this case, say Hallie had a case at trial and she knew the person was innocent. She might call us up to say, can you please look at this case? Or the Office of the State Appellate Defender, they do appeals for people who aren't paying for a private lawyer. They'll reach out to us when they see things in certain cases. Family members, friends, will get contacted by a lot of moms. Moms are the ones who tend to be fighting for their kids, which makes sense. And there sometimes people will reach out to me on social media, and it's people use whatever resources they can find, and that's the best way to do it. I think we try. It's really hard. We try to make it as fair as we can, because it should. So a lot of people don't have a mom to reach out, or Jimmy is lucky. I mean, and very hardworking. He's a brilliant legal mind on his own, and taught himself the law. Fought his own case for so many years. Did a lot of the work himself. But a lot of people don't have that ability. A lot of people, it could be mental health issues. It could be they're in seg constantly. It could be they speak a different language. It could, a number of issues that could prevent them from even finding us or knowing that there are organizations that can do that kind of work. So we try to do some outreach, and we try to kind of reach those different groups that might not be as able to get in touch with us. But it's a constant struggle. So to the extent anyone has advice on that, we are more than happy to listen to it.
Jimmy, I want to transition to you because you have you and your cousin, I believe, have the unfortunate record for being the longest wrongful conviction sentence served in Illinois history. And it goes back to 1981, August 16th, 1981. I'll do a quick version of the story from what I understand, and then feel free to add in any details or important things that I'm missing, obviously. So August 16th, 1981, at a park in Chicago, two gunmen, one holding a rifle, one holding a handgun, open fire where this group of people are. Two people end up dead, a 16-year-old named Julie and an 18-year-old named Hector. And then another man named Juan Padilla, might be, okay, gets struck, what I read is in the butt, but he survived his injury. So two people die, one person gets injured. After this incident, many of the eyewitnesses, from what I'm reading, identified a particular man as being the handgun shooter, Rodriguez, I believe. Many of who actually knew Rodriguez had known him for more than 2 years, even, and said he was the shooter. However, what ends up happening is you, Jimmy, and your cousin David get arrested for the crime, with the police saying David ordered this hit and you were the handgun shooter. And you both were then arrested. You were tried together. And so a single jury, which I have questions about that. And then there was a third defendant. It seemed like there was a lot of defendants, but then the charges were dismissed. So that all happened. Rodriguez was a minor, so he got charges, but then those were dismissed. Regardless, you two had a single jury, and then another defendant had a separate jury, excuse me. And while some of his cases there was a mistrial because the jurors couldn't decide, you and your cousin eventually get convicted and get sentenced to, what was it, 2 life sentences? And it was mainly based on a man named Wally Gator Cruz, who was, for all intents and purposes, the getaway driver. He was the driver of the vehicle that took the shooters to the place and then drove them back. That's like the synopsis. Any key details? I mean, there's a lot of details, but key ones that you want to add to it.
No, I mean, you pretty much got it right as far as the facts goes. But one thing is that I didn't get arrested shortly after the shooting. The case was actually starting to go a little bit cold. They did have the juvenile in custody, and I get arrested in October, several months later, because there was pressure by city officials to want to find somebody. They wanted their pound of flesh, so to speak.
So for 2 months, were you seeing the story and thinking, wow, that's crazy?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I never imagined it would fall on my footsteps, because I knew I had nothing to do with it. And so I had no concerns that it would ever come my way.
And so tell us about the day you're arrested. What are you doing when all of a sudden you realized, oh, wait, y'all think I did this?
My eldest sister came over to make a meal, a dinner. She brought my niece and nephews. David was there with his girlfriend. I was there with my girlfriend. I had just found out not even a week before that she was pregnant. And we were at
Your
the house.
girlfriend?
My girlfriend, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And,
okay.
Yeah, she's the same one who I was with the day that the crime occurred.
Okay.
So she was my alibi, and she did testify at trial. But given the fact the way the prosecution framed their presentation to a jury, they wound up finding me guilty. But I will just say that the fact that I was with her, and we heard a knock on the door, and I look out the window, and you could see, like, the Mars lights or the police lights. There's I could see people running up the sidewalk, and they're just pounding on the door. and that unicorn, you give me, it's the police, Chicago PD, open up, So I don't even know who let them in. Somebody let them in, and they eventually, I was upstairs, and they come with their guns drawn, and they tell me to turn around. I turn around, they push me on the bed, and they cuff me up, and yeah, took me downstairs and sat me on the couch. When David and I inquired what's going on, they know, how sometimes law enforcement could be,
Mm-hmm.
what the F we're here for, like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't. I actually didn't even find out until they took me first before David. They took me in the squad car after about, I say, 40 minutes. And on the way to the police station, they told me that I was going there for a murder, that I was going to be arrested for murder. And I'm like, what? I couldn't even imagine, how this could even be happening. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I thought, naive, being young, that the system's going to correct itself. Like, this
Mm-hmm.
can't be happening. So they'll straighten it all out at the police station. But there, I learned that I was fingerprinted, I was booked for murder, and eventually taken to the Cook County Jail. But yeah, you never really think that it's going to happen to you. When it does, it just seems like a nightmare, total nightmare. Like, what? How can this
Yeah.
be?
And you were 20 at the time?
I was 20 at the time. Yes,
And your cousin, how old was your cousin?
18.
18. Just at the house, hanging out, and all of a sudden you're in the back of a squad car being charged with murder.
Yeah, yeah.
Insane.
How was your name and your cousin's name even brought up into this matter?
Well, I will not deny the fact that I was once affiliated with a gang, and so the way I understand it, that the police theorized that it was supposed to be in our gang's neighborhood, that the
Mm,
gang had to have something to do with it somehow. There was a lot of rumors that the police were getting, and of course, we mentioned the juvenile. He was part of the gang, but it's not like I hung out with this kid. I barely
Mm-hmm.
even knew the guy. And in fact, I don't think he ever was at the house. Um, Meaning, he doesn't know where David lived.
Uh-huh.
So it was just a sad set of circumstances that they swept up a lot of young, mostly juveniles, and they held
Mm-hmm.
them in custody for anywhere from 24 to up to 72 hours. And like she was mentioning, how they do it, some of them not be able to use the washroom, denied water, etc. And yeah, if they can convince a grown man to admit using their tactics, which is called the
Yeah.
read technique, which was
mhm.
invented for law enforcement years ago, on how they can get people to admit to something that they didn't do, and that's where they
Mhm.
started making statements. How Wally, the main accomplished witness, is what they
Mhm.
termed him as. Um, Got involved. He was out of state. They were looking for him because his name had came up somehow, and then supposedly he willingly went with the police to the state's attorney's office, where he immediately went and gave grand jury testimony, which returned an indictment against me and several other people. So that's how my name gets pulled in there, because of the fact they knew I was David was my cousin, and they started building a case against us. That's the best way I can term it.
Mhm. And I mean, they arrested dozens of young guys who were, affiliated with the gang, charged a bunch of them with murder,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
then interrogated them. A lot of them have said that they were, teenagers. Some were 15, that they were abused, threatened, held for 3 days, etc., forced to falsely implicate Jimmy and David, and many recanted, and they did not testify at trial. I mean, they recanted right away. The only
Right.
person who implicated Jimmy at trial was the guy who drove the car.
Yeah.
And he had huge incentive to lie and to
Yeah.
he was seen by eyewitnesses. He had an incentive to get the heat off of himself, and he got 2.5 years in exchange for his testimony.
Really?
Even
Yeah.
after admitting that he was the driver and people
Yeah.
identifying him, he gets 2.5 years, but in exchange for that, get on that stand and say, Jimmy a
We were
dick.
involved. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I
And,
want
and
to add one other thing about this main witness that the prosecution had, and that is that he implicated two people, one of who got indicted with me. He was in a coma mind you, because he had been hit by a car. He's in a coma, but yet you charge him and he's in the county jail with me for about a month, and then gets released when they realize this was it. The second one he implicated was in juvenile custody for another shooting. He was in custody. Impossible for him to be involved, but yet he implicates him. These are red flags which a prosecutor should have questioned this person's testimony, but instead they just let it go, you know. And these prosecutors, and I can't really get too far in, and maybe she could, Lauren could speak more about it, but I will say this, that the prosecution also charged many people with obstruction of justice, which they did not let my defense know before trial. So my lawyer didn't know. It came up from one girl during trial, but we
during
only knew
trial.
During trial, yeah.
That she was charged with, that four witnesses had been charged with either obstruction of justice, other charges to force them to testify against Jimmy. And this girl who, you know, young woman, said she thought that the prosecutor was her lawyer, and they charged them in a different courtroom. So this judge didn't even know about it. Jimmy's lawyers didn't know about it. And they just said, oh, it's fine. Let's continue with the trial.
Wait, I just want to make sure we're all following, because I read it all, so I know, and I'm like, yes, talk about it. But before I just want to make sure everyone is following, and especially for the audience that will be watching. So this driver, Wally, what he ends up telling, in whatever way, he ends up telling the police that there was a gang meeting at Jimmy's cousin's house, David, right? There's a gang meeting at David's house, and there were all of these people at this meeting. And during the course of this meeting, and even I think afterward, because the meeting ends at 6 and Jimmy and David are still there, and this other guy is still there, and they find out that these Latin King gang members are at the park. And so this is according to the driver, Jimmy's cousin David basically orders the hit. He gets the guns and he tells them to go handle it, essentially. What ends up coming out is that some of those people, right, that the driver, Wally Cruz, said was at the meeting, one of them was in a coma, is what Jimmy is saying. Wow. Another one of them was actually in custody. He was already he couldn't have been at the meeting because he was in custody. And there's multiple people that this driver is saying was at this meeting who were actually not at the meeting. And yet, even though that is the truth, police seem to like disregard or think, people testify at the trial to say, hey, this person was in custody. So this meeting, this is a lie. And it doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
not to mention, one of the biggest things to me is that the actual eyewitnesses, the people who were in the park and saw it happen, identified someone else. The person that Jimmy was supposed to be, they identified someone else that day. No one said Jimmy's name. No one's, because obviously he wasn't there. They identified who it was, and that person was picked up. He was charged, but he was charged as a juvenile. He was 16, and his case wasn't transferred to adult court, and so they didn't like that, so they went after Jimmy instead.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So no one's prosecuted behind being
a liar?
Well, yes. The prosecutors have this information, and it's solid information, and you disregard it. And this man spends 41 years in jail behind
42.
And every one of them count.
Yes.
And no one's prosecuted behind this.
Yeah.
I mean, well, prosecutors and judges are still living their lives.
The problem with the system is that they prosecutors, police, and judges have either qualified immunity, in the case of a judge, practically absolute immunity. So, you know, it's very difficult to hold people accountable for their actions so many years ago. I agree, you know, that there has to be a better way in which the system can balance out, where people would have accountability and be responsible for allowing this to happen. But Unfortunately, that's not how it's set up. But mind you, this is not in any statute. It's not codified anywhere. It is a judicially made doctrine, which came out years ago. I forgot the exact case. Maybe Lauren knows it, but it's a judicially made doctrine. In other words, the rule of law is that you do not legislate from the bench, but yet they made this rule in order to protect themselves.
Yeah.
That's really tough. That's for the facts to be right there in your face.
From the beginning, from the day it happens, people are saying, hey, this other guy that I know, that I've known for years, was the shooter. And police are
and
like,
you want to know who was not called at trial? Those 3 eyewitnesses who said that. They were not called to the stand. And then the guy who was shot, who survived, Juan Padilla, who you mentioned before, he later in an affidavit said that he told the police that it wasn't Jimmy and wanted to say that on the stand, and they wouldn't let him, and they were threatening him and the prosecutors, so he just said he didn't see anything instead of falsely implicating Jimmy, at least. But he tried to do the right thing and implicate the correct people, and they wouldn't let him.
Well, there's also, like, people always ask me, like, how is it possible that this occurred? There's also some fault has to be placed on my trial counsel, because there's another element to this whole case where my trial lawyer was actually representing this juvenile who we're talking about at some point before trial. So he knew the existence of these witnesses, and this created what's a conflict of interest.
So let me
implicating his former client.
Yes. And so let's be very clear. So the actual shooter, right? The actual handgun shooter. He was the handgun shooter, right? Rodriguez was the minor. Okay. He gets charged, as Lauren was saying, with this crime, but he's a minor, and they don't transfer his case to adult court. He's charged with murder, but it doesn't get transferred. So eventually his the charges get dismissed. Even though he's the actual shooter, the charges get dismissed. That's right. Correct?
The case didn't proceed. So whether they were technically dismissed is a question, because again, the records are very bad from back then, but
nothing ever came of his particular charges. Okay.
Right.
And so what is later discovered, which was not known at the time, well, at least not by Jimmy, is that Jimmy and David's attorney, right? Your attorney represented you and David.
No, he was representing me only. He was the partner at this law office, represented David. So the way it works ethically with the professional code of conduct is, if an attorney from the firm has a conflict, that conflict can vicariously carry over to the other partner in that firm.
Got it. Okay. And so
his lawyer did represent Rodriguez first, and also represented a couple of Ruben Palomo, who was another co-defendant. And it's interesting, the issue was not that he represented the actual shooter. Legally, that's fine. He could do that, apparently. The issue was that Rodriguez was listed on the state's witness list. So he, as far as everyone knew, was a state's witness. You cannot ethically represent someone who is at any point, there cannot be a crossover when you're representing the defendant and someone who's on the witness list.
Who's going to be testifying against your client, theoretically. Like, hello.
Exactly.
And so this attorney had at one point represented the actual shooter, is then representing Jimmy, also representing Jimmy. And then during trial, doesn't call eyewitnesses who would have gotten on the stand and said, you know who did it? Rodriguez. He doesn't call those witnesses. Why? You would assume because you also represent him. So you're trying to protect him at the expense of Jimmy, essentially, which is insane.
Right. Yeah. And even at some of the proceedings, there's a probable cause hearing for Rodriguez in the juvenile court where the detective testified about all of these other people implicating him. But even the detective wasn't asked about any of that at trial.
People who would have said no it wasn't Jimmy, are just not called.
Right.
Insane. And the other thing I just want to go back to, because I want to make sure there's some points on what we're saying here and how egregious this is.
Man,
During the trial, what is discovered in the middle? So my audience, right? We watch a ton of trials. We have all the opinions all the time. But what
You and
we
me
have
both.
seen, I can only imagine if we had been watching this trial. What happens in the middle of Jimmy's trial is that Jimmy's attorneys find out that multiple witnesses have been charged with
Obstruction of justice.
obstruction of justice.
Mm.
The reason that you have to disclose that kind of information is because people now have incentives, right? If I am being charged with obstruction of justice and the prosecutors tell me, but if you get on that stand, your charges might be dropped. That information has to be known to the defense, and usually it's brought out in front of the jury because the jurors should know that, because they need to understand motive.
Yeah.
They have to weigh this person's testimony if they're credible or not. And so the prosecutors don't tell Jimmy's attorneys this information.
Wow.
Instead, it gets brought out in the middle of trial, and they discover it's not, sorry, I'm yelling. Sorry if there's feedback because I'm upset. They discover it's not just this particular witness. It's like 3 others as well who have this same charge that the prosecutors just never disclosed. That's
Right.
accurate, the way I passionately retold that.
Very accurate.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly what happened, and they used that as a means to prevent them to come and testify on my behalf. That's the theory, and I think it's solid because we do get some statements from them after the fact, years and years later. But also, this young woman who testifies, she's also talking about the deplorable things which the detectives did with her. They threatened to take her to a rival group's area and have her sexually assaulted, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, this is very traumatizing for a young woman who has to come now into court. But she, testified about that. And there's other things she didn't testify about. I mean, it's just, so many things went wrong in this case. I mean, I could probably take up several of your episodes with it. But one thing is I want to point out as well is that my jury never got a formal instruction on the presumption of innocent reasonable doubt. Those are the very foundational tenets of our judicial system. Everybody knows you got to be proven real guilt. My jury didn't get that formal instruction. I later found out that's a winnable issue, which I had that. I also had a federal habeas corpus pending on this very issue while I was in there at the same time. Lauren's doing my clemency, and she's working on my successive post conviction. So I want to say that because you talk about my other co-defendant having a simultaneous but separate jury trial. His jury got that formal instruction, and there was another instruction that my jury didn't get, which is the accomplice witness cautionary instruction, which informs the jurors to know that this person should be looked at with some skepticism, and unless his testimony is corroborated by other evidence, then you can hold it as credible and find me guilty. So these 2 instructions were not given, and I believe that's the reason why my other co-defendant in the separate trial got found not guilty of 1 count of murder and a mistrial or hung jury on the second murder. So one thing's clear in this case is that the people are shot with the same weapon. And so how can you say he's not guilty of one and not? It's just like I said, my jury didn't get that, and there's so many things that, like I said, to it. I'd like to think it was just one sole factor, but there was many improprieties that were going on that led to my conviction.
Yeah. And I just want to, because I had a question about this. So you and David have your own jury. The other co-defendant has his own jury, but the trial is all the same. The evidence presented is all at the same time. Everybody's seeing the same thing, except as we've seen, and when this happens, the jurors get different instructions because the different attorneys kind of say, we want to be told this. And so in the co-defendant's trial, he doesn't get convicted across the board like Jimmy and David. He gets a not guilty and a hung jury versus, and his jury gets those instructions that Jimmy is referring to, but Jimmy and David's jurors don't get that, and they get convicted across the board. Insane.
Yeah, it is. Particularly with this other co-defendant who was tried separately, he was presented as the main shooter, the main perpetrator who had a rifle, and so yeah, I mean, it's really the case is such where the prosecution honed in also on this thing about gangs. If you can present someone as a gang member and you, whether they're guilty of the actual crime, then becomes an underpinning because the presumption is, well, if he did this, then that means he had to be acting in accord with his gang or whatever the theory of the case was. So, like I said, it wasn't that my lawyers didn't want to do it. My attorney and David's attorney fumbled the ball in not getting these instructions to the jury because I believe had they got that, it would have been a different result. I want to make a real quick quote what the federal court has said. We're not giving the reasonable doubt instruction to a jury. They said it is as if you're putting a ship to sea without a rudder, and that's it. They didn't have this compass to say, hey, we have to hold them to the standard. And that made it very easy for it to happen as well.
Yeah. Let me say, Jimmy, your audio is like perfect at sometimes, and then it's not. It sounds like you may be moving something, but we can hear that feedback. You're perfect here.
Okay.
Don't touch nothing.
Okay. All right. I know what it is.
Okay.
I know what it is. All right.
Okay. You sound perfect now.
I mean, I did text, and I'm looking at that. I'm gonna leave my phone alone. I'm not gonna touch it.
Okay.
The double jury thing, though, is also interesting because I think it might be a Cook County only thing, or it's very rarely done where you can have two separate juries or even sometimes three because for whatever reason you've severed the cases, and sometimes you'll shuffle them in and out for different witnesses and things like that. So it's a really interesting thing in Cook County, but it does make it very difficult for the jury to only hear things that are actually in Jimmy's trial versus in Palomo's trial, and it gets very mucked up sometimes.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you why we got separated. The other guy made a self-incriminating statement, and because of that, we had we motioned to have a separate trial, and it's done for what they call judicial economy. In that, if we have these trials together and a lot of the evidence is the same, then we're gonna have it all in one at one time, which really, but it becomes almost circus-like.
Yeah. I can't remember. We watched this happen. A trial that had two jurors. I just can't remember which
in
trial.
Florida, someone says in the
Maybe
comments.
It was Florida. It probably was. A lot of things happened in Florida. I can't remember which one. But okay, so let me
Chicago.
One statement or question. So Jimmy, after that arrest, that was it.
You never get bond or anything. You
was in jail from
this
that
is the
day
thing,
forward.
They try to frame it as a capital offense at first, and that denied David and I bond altogether. But even if we were to have gotten a bond, it probably would have been something insane that we could not have afforded.
Yeah.
And did your girlfriend at the time go ahead and have the child, or how did that work?
Due to me being in Cook County, she wasn't. I was in custody. She wasn't able to take care of herself, and eventually she loses the baby. Yeah, I was kind of tough for me to deal with, because of the circumstances. This could be very stressful, as you can imagine.
100%. Yep. Okay, I want to get through. You guys get convicted. And it was 2 life sentences without parole, plus 30 years for attempted murder and 7 years for conspiracy to commit murder. So you, I'm sure, are in complete disbelief after you hear this verdict and that you have been convicted of something you did not do. What are those first few months, years like for you? How are you processing this? Are you immediately like, let me figure out how to advocate for myself? Like, how do you process that?
I think it's very common for people to have some sort of confidence in the very system that convicts you. So I always felt like this is going to get it right. Somewhere, someone is going to come, and justice is going to prevail, and I'm going to get out. Um, on my first appeals, I practically begged my family, particularly my dad, to get me a private counsel. He does, and counsel. Some of them, they do just enough. He didn't really dig into the case, and so I wound up losing my appeals. Um, but as the money became less and less available to me to get private counsel, I realized that I had to fend for myself, and I had to start learning the law because um, at that point it was either take letting the fate that had been given to me at that time, which natural life without parole in Illinois is death by incarceration. There's no chance of getting out. There are clemency. I mean, you could have used a clemency, but it's not likely that you're going to get that granted. So, yeah, I knew that I had to start learning and study the law myself. I got a job in the law library, invested in books, and just started work. Particularly, also, I honed my skills by helping other people with their legal issues in there. So I worked on a lot of cases, well over 1,200 cases during my time in there.
And can you talk a little bit about that? How did you become known, amongst the inmates is like, you got to
Well, at,
talk to Jimmy. He going to help you.
well, at first, I'm young. I'm probably looking at people look at someone who's young and they think like they don't have the intelligent or the intelligence or the skill to do something like law. So there wasn't a lot of people that were coming to me at first. They had a system there where they had a senior law clerk who would assign me things like grievances and or small claims where somebody lost their property when they got transferred or whatever. So I was doing things like that. But soon I started working on challenging sentences, and once I got the first person back to have his sentence reduced, the laws
Yeah.
were different then. You couldn't do that now. But
Uh-huh.
I started garnering some reputation as, hey, that Latino over there in law library can get you a time cut. And then I started getting more and more cases. But then I started segueing into what's called post conviction work. Obviously, because I wanted to do my own post conviction, and with that, I was getting people back to court. I managed to get a few people new trials. They copped out or whatever. And it wasn't until years and years later, time goes on, you become better at what you're doing if
Yeah.
you're really studying it and practicing it. And eventually, I got someone. His name was Apprentice Nash. I'll never forget it. He had what's called a 116.3 motion in Illinois, 725 ILCS 116.3. You can challenge or ask for forensic testing, in this case, DNA. And I helped him do that. Eventually, we went on appeal. He gets the testing done, he gets private counsel, and then he gets out and he gets exonerated. Unfortunately, Apprentice gets shot and killed by something that happened supposedly with a drug deal, but I don't know the circumstances. But
Yeah.
he gets killed, and he wasn't able to do some of the things that he told me because he's like, "Hey, bro, I got you." Anyway, um, Lauren spoke about my former cellmate. We call him Cellies, Robert Almodovar, who was my cellie, and when I became cellies with him, we he said he had counsel. So I dug into it and writing who he thought was his lawyer and find out that the case had been shelved, meaning that there was nobody doing anything.
Oh
And
my
he's like,
gosh.
"Well, you're gonna help me with this now, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna help you." But I looked at it, he's like, he already did a post conviction. He didn't pursue any federal remedies. So right now his case is stagnant, got nothing in court, and he has a natural life sentence. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So we became separated, and then probably well over a year went by, and he's telling me, "Hey, you got me right." And every time I see him, I kind of feel bad. But
Mm-hmm.
eventually, I see him at the chapel. We're in two different units, and he tells me, "Hey, man, I can't do this, man. I need you to. I need you." So I came up with a new, unique argument based on a federal lawsuit against this detective Guevara. A gentleman named Juan Johnson had won, and he had a civil suit. So I had some of the documents from the civil suit along with a newspaper article indicating that this detective had a pattern and practice of misconduct, and I formulated a post-conviction petition based on the Burge victims using that case law, and I just fashioned it to Guevara, and then I put
Yeah.
it in. It got denied in less than 30 days, and he's like, "What?"
Oh.
He went on appeal and won, and it became a pretty significant case with people doing post conviction work on this particular detective. So he eventually gets out. He gets Jennifer Bonstein, who helps him to get out. So he's out, and now I'm in there. And like she
Yeah.
said, COVID rolls around, and I contract COVID early on. They don't know what it is. I mean, we know in the news that it's this new virus. I was messed up. So I'm talking to Robert. And I'm like, the same words he used on me. I said, I can't do this, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm scared. That you could lose your life. I'm not getting
Yeah.
any. I knew that the governor had recently signed. Our governor in Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, signed an executive order making it a little bit easier to ask for a clemency during COVID. And I told him I wanted Lauren that I saw on TV who helped somebody go home recently.
Mm-hmm.
So Robert, when he talks to Lauren Myers-Koff Mueller, and so she contacts me. But the thing is, I tell Robert after, I said, Robert, this is not the Lauren that I told you. I told you to get Lauren Kastenberg out of the Illinois um,
Wrong,
Innocence Project.
Lauren.
And he's like, no, she's good. I said, yeah, I checked her out. So eventually, like I said, Lauren had only signed on to do my clemency, but after she took a
Uh-huh.
good look at the case, she saw for what it was and realized that I was innocent. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, I had wrote all these innocent projects. I don't know how many times over the years, and got told like, no, we can't do it at the time. But just to hear someone say, hey, you're really innocent, and we're
Yeah.
gonna fight for you all the way. It's just like was such inspiring to me to know that I now had somebody that was listening to me and was gonna fight for me, and he did.
Yeah.
You did all of
I know
this
you kind of you went us on the journey, but I have to say,
in prison.
you are in prison fighting your own case and helping other inmates with their cases, getting them out of prison, literally, while
Yeah,
you are still in there. You're learning the law yourself. You're
yeah. Well,
teaching it to yourself.
it helped me. So when I composed my own post conviction petition, I wrote it out, and I had another attorney, Jennifer Blagg, jump on pro bono and take my case. But I didn't have all of the evidence that I needed. I had a lot, that I
Yeah.
acquired. I knew that we had to invest in a private investigator to try to get these witnesses that never testified at my trial, and we got a lot of them, and that helped me put together a claim of actual innocence. But I also maintained this conflict of interest um,
Mm-hmm.
issue that we spoke about with my trial counsel. So eventually, when Deborah Lovey does take over and do the appeal, I'm very much involved with it. I'm doing
Yeah.
research. I'm giving them case law. I wrote out a mini memorandum of law. And when they do a mock oral arguments, I participate. I'm told I'm the only client that they allowed to do that, and probably the only one that will ever be allowed to do
It
that.
was a mock for your own case, and you were
Yeah,
like,
we
I
did it
want
via
in.
Zoom during the COVID pandemic. And I played the role of an appellate justice and asked her almost the very question that one of the counsels, I'm one of the justices, asked her, which is, uh, well, if Mr. Soto is claiming this conflict of interest, why should we allow it now if he didn't
Yeah.
pursue it then? Wouldn't he be procedurally barred? And she had an answer for it, which we worked on. So, which was that it was never adjudicated. Although I raised it, it was never adjudicated. So therefore,
Mm-hmm.
it was preserved, and I got a favorable ruling on it. Yeah.
You better work, Jimmy. Jimmy was in there wreaking havoc. Hey, I'm
He
fighting.
was. Everybody knows Jimmy. Everybody inside
Yeah, I
knows
won't,
Jimmy. All the exonerees, when they get out, they all know. They all knew Jimmy.
yeah,
That is
yeah. I mean,
This
beautiful.
is beyond
once I get
impressive.
the first guy exonerated, and then they heard about Robert. I mean, I couldn't. And now, mind you, when I'm now working on a lot, like Robert got out in 2017, so I was in Menard. I get back to Stateville. Stateville then has this program by Northwestern. Northwestern prison education program. I was skeptical, like, is this really Northwestern? And it was like, yeah. And so I signed up, I applied, I get in, and I'm doing my undergrad work while I'm working on my post conviction. That gets denied. Then I'm doing my appeal of my post conviction, and I'm doing my undergrad work as well. And I'm very proud to say that I eventually graduated magna cum laude, and
Yes.
um, and so now I guess I could bring this up to date. Now that I've
Tell
been out,
us. Let
I've
me
been working.
remove the picture.
I've been working at the law school with at the first with the community um, justice and
Which
human
law
rights
school,
center,
Jimmy?
Northwestern School of Law.
That's
Northwestern.
where I went.
Yeah,
I
and
love it.
I've been working there probably March of 24, so just a few months after I got out in December of 23. Then I currently work at SWAP, which is the social worker advocacy program there, which is centered on juveniles or young adults who are sentenced and have to navigate both the prison system and then the transition coming out here. So it's really, really different work than I'm used to doing because I love to do criminal work, obviously. But I recently, as of yesterday, got news that I've been accepted to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana's law school. So at least I know that's my dream always was to go to law school. I thought it was unattainable, obviously, because I was in there. But then when I got out here, given my age, but a lot of people like said, go for it. I struggled with the LSAT, but I finally got the score that I needed, and I got in there. So I got 7 other schools to hear from. So one of which is Northwestern. So I
But
don't know
Jimmy's
what
going to law school.
I'm
Jimmy's
going
going to
to
law
somewhere.
school.
Regardless, I'm going to get
Jimmy
this
is
degree.
going to law school.
And I want to be really clear that I'm doing this because people tell me this a lot too. Like I will be compensated, hopefully at some point. But I'm doing this because I know what it is to be in there, and nobody's listening to you that you're saying you're innocent. While Lauren and Exoneration Project and there are other groups that do such wonderful, tremendous work, there's not enough lawyers doing this type of work,
100%.
And there's a
And it's
really
hard
a
to get
need
the
for.
attention like we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier.
Right. And so I just want to be able to do that type of work and to help people out. And this is my feeling that if I could do that with a 3-inch golf, those golf pencils, it's really small plastic thing with a legal pad.
Yep.
Just look what I'm going to do with this Mac or this
Yes.
laptop, given once I got the official degree of my JD, I'm going to really go in there and try to help as many people as I can who I know, because I truly believe that the way the system is set up, there are many, many, many people. There are other Jimmy Sotos in there who are deserving to get justice.
And just, think about it. We do our best to be understanding, empathetic, and everything, but having someone who has lived it, knows what everyone's going through, what kind of help people need. It's a different level. It's
100%.
amazing. Everyone's saying they're teary. I'm getting teary talking about it. I'm so proud of Jimmy.
Inspiring. It's
so
amazing. It is absolutely beautiful. To come from such a tragic situation that you should have never been in and to turn that around into what you are doing. You've changed people's lives already, and the work you're going to go on to do is truly, it's beautiful. That's amazing.
It is. Yeah, it's the real essence of paying it forward.
Yeah.
That is great. That is inspiring. Whoever listens to this podcast is not going to have any excuses.
Honestly,
at all. That's awesome. Man.
Yeah. But I've been doing a lot of advocacy work in other realms. I work with a lot of different nonprofits or campaigns and trying to bring change to our sentencing, which specifically truth in sentencing with credit for change. I'm doing stuff with Parole Illinois to bring parole. Illinois does not have parole. I'm trying to prompt our governor to look at more clemencies. And also I'm a strong advocate for quicker review for claims of actual innocence.
And can we also talk about how Jimmy took the LSAT in prison?
I saw that. I saw that.
Yeah, I did. I had to take it.
LSAT is hard enough as is.
Yeah, and then, mind you, I'm going back and forth to court every 2 weeks. I'm finishing up my undergrad work, and finally we have graduation a month before. And I want to point this out as well. Lauren did do my clemency. It was called emergency clemency, and, the governor probably 6 months before I get out, he grants it. So I have natural life without parole. Our governor grants me life with parole, and then
That's right.
a couple of weeks before about a month before I'm going to get out, Lauren gets word that I'm going to have a hearing to the
Mhm.
parole board. So she got to put a whole parole package together. And she does a presentation about 8 days before I get out. She does a parole thing. So this poor woman has to
I
put this all
forgot about
together.
this. I like blocked this out. I completely forgot that. Yeah, we
Yeah,
did. It was granted. I forgot. In my mind, I was like, oh, well, he
And
never looked at it. No, it was granted. He was
we went
commuted to
before
parole
the,
eligible.
the
Got
toughest
it.
parole board member, most conservative one, and I don't mind saying his name, Topi, who at the end, he's leaning towards granting me. I saw him
Wow.
because I've already testified for other people for clemency hearings and one juvenile parole hearing. And
Oh, you
he
saw
told,
him at it.
yeah, and he told me, he's like, I was going to present, because he was going to present to the other parole board members. He was going to present the fact that he thought that I would be a good
Oh.
parole candidate.
You didn't tell me
So
that.
yeah, I didn't find that out till not too long ago.
You
Yeah,
don't need
so
parole because
no, I
it's
didn't need it.
over.
I didn't need it. Well, only because I think the reason why he would have done it was because of my many accomplishments in there, and
Uh-huh.
also because of my claim of actual innocence. It was a risk. You don't
Yeah.
generally go in there before a parole board and say you're innocent. And I
Yeah.
remember my opening line. I said I cannot in good faith admit to something that I didn't do. But then I got to some of the circumstance, and I said Lauren did a very, very well composed presentation herself, given the time limits and everything that we were going through, because she was fighting in the circuit court of Cook
Yeah.
County to get me out, and but then she had to go and do this. So yeah, kudos to her.
Can I ask, because it was a long process. I was reading like there's the appeals and then the courts are denying and then it's you get some hope because it goes to the next stage and then it's denied and then the prosecutors are still fighting even though there's no like actual evidence. It's only so it's years upon years of you doing this work. I, two questions. The first is how did you get the way I read it is that you were a part of getting those affidavits from the witnesses to recant. How were
Well,
you like calling these people? How did this work?
no, no, no. I didn't call it. I know better than to try to communicate with them directly, because
Okay.
I can come back to you if they said that.
Mhm.
What I did was I told my co-defendant and cousin, I told David, listen, if we're ever expected to see getting out of here, we need to invest in an investigator. So we went
Mm.
and got a private investigator who, by the way, has a connection to Northwestern. His name was
Okay.
Sergio Sortella. He had tactical solutions. We contact him. He was working for the Mendel School of Journalism. So he's
Mhm.
working with journalism students
Oh.
doing investigative work. But he also had his private investigation firm or office. And so I contact him, and he got his partner, Randy Udell, who went to a party of a older former gang member. And
Okay.
there was going to be a lot of these people there. And they
Mm.
went there and they got a lot of affidavits there, but they also did work of tracking down people, going to them and
Yeah.
getting the affidavit. So once I that and he gave me a discount, on top of that. Yeah,
I love
I
it.
knew how to work it. And
Yeah.
so once armed with the affidavits, and I have been asking for the police reports forever. I mean,
Mhm.
Lauren saw the record. I had all sorts of things I was filing, and I wasn't able to get everything. So I had some documents that indicated as this juvenile and etc. And I had one where this juvenile was arrested in the presence of his lawyer, which was my lawyer.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so John De Leon. And so once I saw that, I'm like, wait a minute here. So things started, falling in place. eventually when Lauren comes up, she gets more police reports. So, and I don't even think we got all of them. Like you said, cases get so old, things get lost or purposely withheld, whatever the case may be. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a struggle to get there. But once I got the affidavits, I knew if I put together a petition on my own, I could shop it around
Yeah.
to different attorneys, and I did. I landed on one which was, like I said, Jennifer Black. But eventually, when it gets denied, that's when Lauren steps in.
You being able to do that, like obviously the work of the investigator, but like understanding I can get these. Like there I know that these people will do this if we can just get,
Well,
get to them.
I didn't
Um
know that they would do it. I had hoped
okay.
that they would do it
Okay.
because I never got any affirmation that they would. It was a
Okay.
gamble, but it was worth the gamble because I just
Yeah.
felt they're older. They like,
Mhm.
they would come around, and
Yeah.
I just prayed and they did
Talk
fine.
about I imagine I can't imagine the relief that you feel when you see the affidavit, when you see that these people have recanted and have started to tell the truth. But before that and during that, and like I said, this was years upon years of denials and all of that. Can you just give us a little glimpse for people who haven't experienced this and don't really have a way to connect it? But like, what is that emotional roller coaster? How do you stay committed and motivate? How do you get yourself to where you are today when every day you're in a cell and you're, being told what to do? And like, what is that emotional roller coaster like?
Oh my gosh, it certainly is an emotional roller coaster because you put things in the court, you think that you might get some traction, and just to get a denial. I probably got so many denials, it's not funny. But I knew I had to fight because the only other option, if I didn't, was to accept the fact that I would wither away in prison, and
Mhm.
that wasn't going to happen. And still, in the back of my mind, I felt like if I can get the new evidence that I could
Mhm.
prove my innocence and that I would get, some sense of justice. And
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't that easy. Sure, getting the money together, and because as the years go on, people forget about it. My family are
Yeah.
there; and they're there to try to help me as best they can, but they can only do so much. And so, I just had to save money. I had to sacrifice not going to commissary. Went to like really I probably lost a lot of weight, but it was worth it. I mean, you had to
Yeah.
be able to put it in blood, sweat, and tears, and have the faith that what you're doing is going to pay off. And that's what kept me going. Is that I knew,
Mhm.
no matter how elusive it seemed, that I would get my proverbial day in court.
Was
Let me
your Oh, go ahead.
question for you. Why you are in prison doing this? Prison isn't a safe place. You
No,
have different sets, different religions, different races. Like, how was that navigating around that whole situation
it it
and
wasn't
being
it
able?
wasn't it wasn't easy. But as a jailhouse lawyer has some type of status in there
Mm.
to where people like, hey man, I didn't differentiate. I would help anybody. And here's the
Mhm,
crazy thing, and anybody, no one could ever tell you that otherwise, that I ever helped, that I charge people. Because
Mm.
an old time told me, you do this and it's going to be worth its weight in gold. You'll see the
Oh,
payoff.
wow.
And I always
Mhm.
kept in my mind. So I never told somebody like, hey, I want $500 to work on your case, 300. I never did that. Yes,
Wow.
people would give me commissary or they would try to look out for me and send me money, order from their
Mhm.
family. Sure, but I never would quote somebody. I would say whatever you feel is right. That was my
Mm.
feel. Whatever you feel is
Yeah.
right, do it. And I just feel that you're putting that karma, you reap what you sow. I'm putting out
Mhm.
this good energy. I'm helping people sincerely. And I didn't just do a case, I would dive deep into cases. I would go
yeah.
back, I would use whatever tools necessary, Freedom Information Act, motions, whatever I could do to help an individual put together a good, sound argument in the court. That's what I would do. And, it paid off. A
Yeah.
lot of people got good results. There's still cases that I worked out that are pending right now. They're making their way into court and they're still looking and hopefully they'll get um, their day in court too.
Yeah.
So those inmates were like, "Hey, Jimmy's off limit."
Exactly, exactly. That protected. I mean, here it is. We speaking about going back to the parole board. You know, I've only gotten 4 infractions, 4 disciplinary tickets in my whole time. 42
Wow.
years.
Years.
That's about a ticket
42
average.
years.
Yes, and I think 2 of them had to do with me having other people's legal material. And when I went to see the committee, I said, I'm gonna always have this. So, you do what you have to do because nobody's helping them and I'm continue. They said, well, we applaud what you're doing. The rules are you're not supposed to have other people's work, which is ridiculous to me. And
Yeah.
yeah, but eventually they stopped writing me up on that. The other one was altering the radio and missing my door. For it's like crazy. So I
Hmm.
didn't
Yeah.
have anything with violence, anything dealing with anything else. I was I really thank God that I was able to not come out of there pretty much unscathed.
Yeah.
God, that's great.
Okay, so we were talking a little bit about the end when you're getting out. And I was reading an article about how the night before, so there was a hearing scheduled, or you're trying to get information if a hearing can walk us through the night before and then the day of when somebody tells you you was on TV today.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, all right. I've been going to court back and forth for 6 months, all right, since June. So every 2 weeks, right? Every 2 weeks I'm going to court. And I'm told by Lauren and other parts of my legal team, well, it's looking good, but we don't know. We're just waiting on the prosecution to, have it go through the channels and the review that they got to do. And it's like, okay, maybe the next court date. Well, the next court date, it looks good. So finally we get to December and yeah, I finally get word that things are gonna look good the next day. But it never really, you so yearn to hear that, you know, that hey, you're gonna be getting out, and it just seems so surreal. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm the night before, I'm like, you know what? It's not done until it's done.
Mm-hmm.
It's in my mind like there's going to be this last minute thing to say, you know what? There's going to be another continue. You heard Lauren say about 7 years fighting with that post convict. It's going to be something else. Don't get overly excited. Um, so I'm getting ready. We go early in the morning, like 6 o'clock. They come to get you for a court writ. The officers come get you. You go up front. They take a recent picture of you. You know why? And then they
Mm-hmm.
cuff you up, and you get in a van or a bus, and they take you to court. So I'm getting ready, and my neighbor's pounding on the door, yelling my name. Jimmy's. I see. I never had a moniker. I never had a nickname. So most people, I'm one of those individuals where people just don't say Jimmy. They always say my full name, Jimmy Soto. Jimmy. I even had a guy tell me one time because he thought it was just one name. Your name Jimmy Solo. Jimmy Sola. And I said, Jimmy Sola is my first and last name.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he thought it was like one name. But anyway,
One
that's
day.
something different. And
It's like
the guy's
Madonna.
yelling my name. My cellie is like, he's sleeping. He got to go to work later. And he's like, hey, why don't you answer this guy? Because he won't shut the F up. So I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, man, put it on channel. I've been trying to get your attention. Put it on channel 5, NBC. You're on TV. You're going home today, bro. And I'm like, what? So we put it on, and I'm waiting for the next one to come on. So this is like 5 o'clock in the morning. Come 5:30, they don't show anything about the story, you know. So I had to wait till 6 o'clock, and then
Mm-hmm.
they finally show a horrendous picture of me on there when I'm in the 8th grade graduation thing, and
Oh, maybe
Oh,
I have it.
yeah, and so they have this picture of me saying that me and my cousin are expected to be released again, expected. Like it didn't say we are, and I'm like, this is starting to look good.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm supposed to be leaving at 6 o'clock. So now I'm telling the officer, hey, what's going on with the writ? He's like, well, let me go check. He comes back and says, when my sergeant says you're not on the court writ. I
Oh
said,
my
I'm
gosh, I
supposed to go to
forgot
court.
about all of this.
Now the whole gallery is saying that I'm that he's going home, man. He was just on TV. And now I'm not only on NBC, I'm on other channels. The stories on other channels, and they're like, he's going home. They're like, well, that might be true. You might be going home from here. So now I'm thinking, I saw other people that got released, that they get released from prison. So the
Oh.
phones do not come on until like around 8 o'clock in there. You have to wait for the phones to come on. So the telephone comes on, get it word to Lauren, and she's like, "Well, what are you doing there?" I said, "I'm here." She goes, "You're supposed to be at court, you know?" I said, "Well, they have." She said, "Don't worry about it. I'm gonna make some phone calls." So I waited, called her back. She goes, "They're gonna come get you. Don't worry." They don't come get me till like around 10:30. Uh,
Oh.
we go down to Stevenson Expressway. They're on the shoulder the whole time. They're like, "We don't know who you called or whatever, but they told us we got to get you there as fast as we can."
Oh,
So I
wow.
get there. Generally, you go into the bullpen. So I see Lauren, Carl, some other attorneys, and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, like it's gonna happen." And they take me up to the courtroom, and I always thought, imagined in my mind, it was gonna be this like, you know, To Kill a Mockingbird, this dramatic court scene, like Mississippi Burning, where suddenly the judge is forced to give me this, verdict, like Hurricane Carter, you know,
Mhm.
where the judge finally says, "You know what, you're right.
Yeah.
We presented the case. You're innocent. Let you go. Drop the charges." But that didn't happen like that. The judge basically went on, this laundry list of what he could do. He didn't have to follow this, and he warned the audience there to be calm, not to get loud. And it was like anticlimactic. Like, okay,
Oh.
motion granted.
Mhm.
You know,
No, Jimmy, that is not what happened. Do you not
Ah.
remember the judge being like, "Well, I don't know about this."
that's what I'm
And then
saying. He gave this whole laundry list where he cited case law where he could, in his discretion,
we
he doesn't
basically
have
had
to
to
grant it.
argue why Jimmy should be let out, even though the state was agreeing.
Right.
What?
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
judge had all
Jeez.
these questions about perceived,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah. He
know.
did. Like I said, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but
Oh.
eventually he
And
does
I'm up there
sign it.
like, "Oh my God, we told
Yeah.
Jimmy
Yeah.
he was getting out today, and this judge is not going to let him out. This is the worst day of my life."
Crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, and that started sinking in. Like this thing that I had, like it's not, it's not over till it's over. And it's like,
Mhm.
Mhm.
is it gonna happen? So I'm just there, like, God, please let it happen. And then eventually he signs it. Um,
Thank
but
God.
yeah,
And then it was
yeah,
a whole thing
yeah,
about getting them out that day.
Oh my
right.
goodness.
Because now they're telling me now I got to get back to the prison. They say in order for me to be released. And so I
Mhm.
remember I didn't have any cuffs on me. They put the cuffs back on me and the shackles, and then they're telling me I'm not going to go back to the prison till like 6 o'clock. And Lauren's like, "No, don't worry about it again. No, that's not going to happen." Um, and she's like, "Why do you have
Right,
this
because
cuff
they're
on
like
him? This is a free man."
they have the bus, and they're like, "Well, the bus isn't going back till 6." And I was like, he's
Look,
not
look,
convicted
man. This
anymore,
man is
so
this man has
Right.
Yeah.
been in prison for 42 years. Make this
They weren't
happen
trying to
right
do
now.
that.
What?
What are
But
you
she
talking about?
called who
Six
she needs
o'clock.
to, and now another set of officers come get me and take me back to Stateville. When I get to Stateville, a lieutenant greets me when you go into the actual, uh, past the last gate to get into the prison, and he's like, "I don't know who you pissed off, but they told us to process you out." I go to there, they take my fingerprints, take the picture, give me $25, and say, "Hey, good luck," and that was it. And next thing I know, I'm going to this gatehouse where it's like the first entry when you come to visit the prison, and
Mhm.
it got closed for me. I couldn't wait to rip off the
Oh,
prison
I'm
blues,
sure.
put on my
Yeah.
clothes, and then they're saying, "You see all those lights down there at the entranceway when you turn it off the highway into the prison?" They said, "That's all for you." And
Oh.
next thing you know, I go down there and there's these bright lights, and I'm out. So just imagine, I got a process that I am now outside the prison. I
Yeah.
have all my charges dismissed, and I'm just taking it all in
I
when
mean,
I'm
there were like
actually
100 people there between media and Jimmy's supporters and family. It was crazy.
yeah, it
I'm
was really
sure.
crazy. Yeah, it was really
Since
crazy.
1981.
Crazy.
1981. So like I said, it was really, it's almost dreamlike. I say that to people. It's just so surreal. Like you don't really imagine that you're out, that you're free, that.
Mhm.
And I heard and saw somebody from New York who said that once you're on this side of the wall as opposed to the other, the air smells cleaner, the sky looks
Mm.
brighter, the moon, the stars. So I'm looking up and I'm like, that's exactly right. And I think even made a comment like that, like, everything seems so different on this side of the wall.
Yeah.
And Lauren had asked me, "What's your first thing you want to eat?" I said, "Man, I want a steak and lobster." because I'm thinking like I want to have this really good meal. And
Yeah.
she takes me to a really good steakhouse called the Rosebud, but they don't have lobster. Instead,
Oh.
his choice would be black Chilean sea bass, and I'm like, I'm not sure what that is, but okay, I'll try it. It was delicious. But
Yeah.
here's the thing: when you're deprived of such good food for years, your eyes are bigger than your stomach. You just can't
Yeah.
eat it,
Yeah.
you know. And then they're telling me like, let's have a drink. Like I'm with Robert. Robert's there, my friend, dear friend.
Oh,
And he's like, let's have
yeah.
a drink, And then someone else, let's have a drink for you. So here I am
Oh, you get
drinking that. And they're like,
toasted.
what do you want to drink? I said, well, give me a whiskey and water, a soda. And your body's not used to alcohol.
Yeah.
So then I'm
Yeah.
there, I got
Yeah.
a really buzz, and I'm there, and it was great. The meal was great. Couldn't finish it. But yeah, it's
Wait,
like,
wasn't that also the night of Bonjean's
yeah, Bonjean had
Christmas
her
party?
she
So
had a
Jenny
Christmas party.
Bonjean, who got Cosby freed,
Oh.
she represented R. Kelly at some point. You
Uh-huh.
know, she also does wrongful conviction cases. So she got Robert, his cellie and best friend, out, and some
Got
other
it.
people. So she
Yeah.
represented David Ayala, his cousin.
And
Okay.
they invited us to the Christmas party. Yeah, that
Oh.
So
very
that
day.
night, also
Eventful
went to
day
the
out.
Christmas party because it was
Right.
like
That's
10,
a
11 days before
celebration.
Christmas.
Yeah, but I didn't. I mean, come on. I've heard that you can have these anxiety due to trauma, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I can handle this. So I go in there, and there's this loud music, louder than we don't get that
Mm.
music in there. It's this
Yeah.
booming sound. It's a lot of people, and then people
Mhm.
want to buy you drinks. And now I don't want to get too drunk, but
Yeah.
it's like that, and it's just like
A lot.
it's too much. It was over
Yeah.
sensitive. I had to go to they had like a little patio area. I had to go to that
Mhm.
area several times just to like try to get my composure, and then I had
Yeah.
to leave. I mean, it lasted well into the night. I probably left at about maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't want to be a party pooper, but I just was feeling this tenseness, and I
I'm
had to get out of there.
sure.
And I
Yeah.
realized, and it happened to me more than that. To be in big spaces with a lot of people,
Mhm.
it takes a while. I mean, to this very day, sometimes I also feel these urges come on. You never really
Yeah.
feel, all the way free of that place because it has such an impact.
Rightfully
I would like
so.
to think I don't have that, but it's true. It's real.
Yeah. I was going to ask if that's still, I mean, do you still have moments of like, damn, I'm really free?
Yeah, yeah.
Or like, do you have to
I'll tell you
almost
the worst
retrain
thing.
yourself?
I don't sleep well, so when I do have my sleep, the worst thing is that feeling like you're getting up, and it's that sense that you're still in there, like
Mm.
another day that you're waking up in prison. Like
Mhm.
I have a queen size bed, right? It took me months, probably close to a year, to move from just like a
Oh,
2 foot by that one space,
yeah.
because when you're in a bunk, you're
Yeah.
used to sleeping like this because you're the fear that you might fall over, and you're just so
Mhm.
accustomed to that. To really stretch out, and sleep
Yeah.
on there. Yeah. But there's things like, I'll be in the shower, simple things like in the shower with the shower head. It just feels like, wow, so many
Mhm.
years, you can't adjust the water, you can have hot, you can do whatever you want, the way the spray comes out. And
Yeah.
that just lets me know, I'm out, I'm
Yeah.
free. Um, but yeah, I don't know if I'll ever really truly be free of that place because, the experience of being in there, the way it's dehumanized, etc. I won't,
Mhm.
stand on the soapbox, but it has a lasting effect on you that I'm
Absolutely.
so thankful that I went to go get therapy because I know I really
Great.
needed it. But I just feel like it's something that's overlooked because people see the stories. You're in this limelight, and then it
Mhm.
starts to fade, and then
Yeah.
you're not excuse. The thing that keeps my story probably going is because of the amount of years being one of the longest serving exonerees in Illinois history.
Yeah.
But with that, I try to use it as a platform to bring awareness to things like this, but to incarceration in general. One of the things I did when I got out, my fellow cohort and friend Michael Broadway passed away because of the conditions at Stateville. He had an
I heard
asthma
that.
attack during
Mhm.
a heat wave, and it just infuriated me. And I just channeled all that energy into saying I got to do something. So I worked with some attorneys at Lovie. I worked with some organizations. I even gave some testimony in the federal court about the conditions.
Mhm.
When I first signed the declaration affidavit, and we got it closed. It was
Wow.
slated to be closed anyway, We just made sure that they closed it sooner than they
That
thought they were
prison that
going
your friend was in who passed away, that prison was
Yes.
closed.
And it was where
Wow.
Jimmy was for a long time.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. Those conditions were just horrible. And like I tell a lot of people, it's not so much just the years that I served, it's the conditions and the treatment that you go through in there, that day-to-day just struggle just to try to hang on to your humanity and just find the little joy. One good thing of the pandemic was this, that somebody higher up said, hey, they had taken away fruits from us, and for that matter, a lot of the fresh vegetables. So everything was canned.
Mm.
As a result, they said start giving them back fresh fruits and vegetables. And I remember the first time a sun-kissed orange, they gave it to me, and I opened it up. The smell, the texture, the taste of it. I mean, I was almost in tears, to be honest,
Yeah.
to know that, because I hadn't had an orange in 25 years.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and so just to have that, you could just feel like, I know it sounds crazy, but like the nutrients just going into your body just
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
you feel, so much of a human, and
Yeah.
I was deprived of that, and those are the things that stick with me. Those type of things that you took so much away. I like, to this day, I say it all the time. A knife, a fork, utensils seem foreign to me because I'm 42 years eating with a plastic spork.
Yeah.
That just seems unnatural where it should seem natural, but it
Mhm.
doesn't. It just doesn't.
I mean, 2/3 of your life were spent in prison, so that's what you're so used to.
Yeah.
Right. But I appreciate the little things, a walk, just a walk, an unencumbered walk. No one tell me deuce it up. No one's telling me to stop, go, hold down the noise, yeah. Just to
Yeah, when
be
you
able to
first got
walk.
out, you were going to the lake and watching the sunrise and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
and
That was another way of just
sending
knowing that I was
pictures.
out. Yeah.
I'm just so thankful and appreciative that, you both came on to share this story. I am impressed, beyond
Yeah.
impressed. I don't even know the appropriate word, by what you've been able to do with this story, this unfortunate tragedy that has happened. The fact that you've been able to turn it around, you've helped other people, helped yourself, and are going to go on to do even more work is absolutely incredible. You
Before
want to
we
say something?
go,
Yeah,
um,
please.
I saw some questions earlier on the side
I
about
like
compensation.
Oh, yes.
So I'm just gonna quickly talk about that. So Illinois does have a certificate of innocence process where you have to go back to the same judge and petition for a certificate of innocence. And then if you get granted that, you go to the Court of Claims in Illinois to try to get some compensation from the state. There's a statute about that. Right now, it caps out at I think it's like 280,000, no matter how long you served. So the most Jimmy would get total from that is 280,000. We did get the certificate of innocence. So he has the certificate of innocence, but there is a bill pending in the Illinois legislature to increase that to 50,000 a year, which is much better.
Yeah.
And would make a
Per
huge
year that you
difference
were
for,
incarcerated?
yes,
Oh, wow, okay.
which would make a huge difference for Jimmy.
Yeah.
So Jimmy has talked to legislators about
Yeah.
that.
I'm going to give testimony in the spring when they're back in session. Me and another person named Brian Beals. Yeah.
Yep. So
How
we're hoping
could
that gets passed. So we've kind of put his certificate of innocence proceedings on hold to see about that. But he's also now represented by civil lawyers, Lovey and Lovey law firm, in a wrongful conviction case, suing the city, the officers, the detectives in the case, and
Sue 'em
And
all.
the county and the
and the
county.
county.
Sue 'em all, Jimmy.
So
Yeah.
that's ongoing.
Yeah, that's still pending. That's why there's some things that I really want to get
Yeah.
more into to explain to you, because there's other things that have surfaced, or
Yeah.
things that obviously happened with the case, but
They
protect
always
yourself.
learn more in the civil side. I'm telling you this,
Yeah.
when the civil suit happens, they always, always, always learn more about
You know that. Yeah,
crazy
you know what's going
violations.
on. Yeah, it's
well
just you think this is wild so far. It's even more crazier
Right.
when all this comes out at a later date, as far as some of the other things that they either withheld or manipulated.
Can I ask, and maybe from both of your perspectives, and we've talked about, I mean, there were a ton of issues clearly, but what would you say, like, these cases, what is the most common reason that these things are happening? Like, what goes wrong? Many times in these kinds of cases, what goes wrong?
So I think the number one cause now is government misconduct, which across the board could be police, detectives, prosecutors, judges. Um, so I think that I mean, it can be a number of things. It can be, like we had in Chicago, John Burge, and his cohorts literally torturing false confessions from people for decades. So many wrongful convictions out of that. But it can also be just tunnel vision, where it's a natural human response to, once you believe something, you kind of ignore all the evidence to the contrary, like we see all the time these days.
Yeah.
And they end up focusing on someone and they just can't see outside of that. So we see that happen a lot. Also, and I think someone said this in the comments, eyewitness identification is really bad. Eyewitnesses are very, very bad at identifying who they saw. I'm terrible at it. And we actually have been able to uncover both, the government misconduct and these causes of wrongful conviction, the issues with eyewitness identifications, because of DNA. So once DNA came about, we were able to scientifically prove that someone didn't do it, that this other person was the actual perpetrator, and look at how on earth did this happen? Why did this teenager falsely confess to this horrible rape and murder? Or why were they identified by this other person? And we saw that eyewitnesses are very bad, and there are all these factors that play a role there. And we saw that everyone is susceptible to falsely confessing. You think that you would never do it. How could you ever falsely confess to a murder? That would never happen to you. But Jimmy touched on this. The police are literally trained to extract confessions. And there are so many different tactics, abuse and threats being one, but even just manipulation, coercion, that you can see when interrogations are recorded, and sometimes they are now, not across the board, but you see it happen in real time. It's crazy to see how it happens, and every single person has a breaking point, or a pressure point, and they find that and they make it happen. So there are so many causes. I mean, there's junk science, things that they used to think proved that someone shook their baby, or someone set a fire intentionally. They now know that was bullcrap. I mean, it was not accurate. So a lot of these things with time has developed, but a lot of things is about training. I mean, training officers better. And, that's something the Illinois Innocence Project is at the forefront of. They actually are training in wrongful convictions, avoiding wrongful convictions, every cadet in the state of Illinois now.
Wow.
And so they have people like exonerees like Jimmy going and talking to the cadets and explaining what happened in their case, what to look for, how to avoid it, things like that. And that's one of the great ways to avoid it. Also legislation, and just getting the word out. I mean, your listeners, what you guys are doing, having the public understand how this happens, and then it does happen when they're on juries. They can say, hey, now that doesn't make sense. This person doesn't seem credible because of XYZ, and really hold the state to their burden.
Yeah. Let me say this. You talk about keeping a record. Lauren, how many people did you get out in the last 2.5 years?
Oh gosh.
Right. I tell people that Lauren probably holds the record in Illinois for the most people in the 2.5 year span. Because I've gone several times. She'll tell me, hey, somebody's about to get out, and I'll go there and be there when they get out. Because I know how it is. You got that, I term it, that deer in the headlights. You're just like, it's shock. It's a culture shock,
Yeah.
Yeah, you do need every and anyone that's in your circle to making sure that you're okay. And knowing that gives you a bit more, ability to transition take it day by day.
Is there anything either of you would like to say either to the audience, people who may end up as jurors on these cases, or people who are incarcerated right now facing, these same kind of challenges, trying to fight for their case? Just any kind of lasting words that you would like to leave with anyone in particular. It could be the audience, it could be people incarcerated, family members, anybody you think or the people who got on that stand, Jimmy, and lied about you. If you want to tell them something, you can too.
I'll let Lauren go first.
I think the thing that is so important to remember is that the legal system, it's set up and based on humans, and humans err, humans are fallible, humans lie, whether it's purposely or not. I mean, there are eyewitnesses who are wrong, who are intending to be fully accurate. And when you're looking at a case, whether it's something coming out in the media and we're all immediately, oh my gosh, he definitely did it. Or if it's you're sitting on a jury and you're looking and this guy or woman is sitting in the defendant's seat and you think, well, the prosecution thinks they did it. The police think they did it. They had to get there for a reason. They probably did it. There's got to be good evidence against them. That's just not always the case. And we have to hold everyone accountable, the system accountable, because they get it wrong. And we see it constantly, how they get it wrong and how it happens. And it's so dangerous just to assume that, everyone's telling the truth, that everyone gets it right. So just looking at it critically, like you guys do, and like your audience does, is just so important, and just spreading that to everyone else. And I think that, that it's getting so much better. People are recognizing that because we've seen the stories of wrongful convictions, and there, this podcast and some of the famous cases that we've seen. But sometimes it's just every case is even worse than you could imagine. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And you just always have to keep that at the forefront of your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. I saw in the comments they said I got the right Lauren. I say that a lot too.
You
I wound
got
up
the
with the
right
right Lauren
Lauren.
because as Kate would have it, she's the one that got me out. But I just want to say that the system is set up to where they do give what's called an abundance of credibility to those that have authority in that courtroom, i.e., the judge, the prosecution, and police. They give police, that, and then the people that are accused or any of the witnesses that you may have as an alibi are given a credibility deficit. They're looked at as if they are not credible. I would say that please, follow your mind and oftentimes your heart to say that, whether or not what they're presenting to a layperson in a jury trial is backed up by real facts, because they will oftentimes present it as factual when in fact the evidence doesn't really hold to that. So to look at things with skepticism, don't take it on face value. I think that could also avoid wrongful convictions. And conversely, when we're talking about people that are trying to advocate for their actual innocence, that people are supportive and realize that this is a more common problem. There are some people, it's a byproduct of the system, but it's not something that's an outlier. It is really something that's embedded into the system. Like she said, human error occurs, but sometimes it's just these things that people know in the face. Like, for example, in my case, where they knew there was another suspect, they just totally wanted to bury it and ignore it once they set their sights on me. And so it can happen to me, it can happen to other people. And to those that are incarcerated and the loved ones that are out there advocating for them, no, keep hope alive, because if I am anything, I am a living testament that you can prevail in justice if you just keep at it. Just keep fighting, keep hoping, keep praying. It can happen. Believe me, it can happen. Yeah. Lastly, you asked about the person who falsely got me in here. He was the main witness. For years, I had a lot of hate for him, but I learned as I matured and grown older, he's as much a victim in this as I or anyone else, because of the way they manipulate him, use them. Here's an 18-year-old mind not developed. They manipulated him into doing this. I don't have any hate towards him. I've long ago forgiven him, and I want to say it again. Wally Cruz, I forgive you. I understand what happened to you, and I hope that you understand that you are much a victim because I'm sure he's living in turmoil himself of what he
Yeah.
did. Because anyone who has any sense of humanity or morality could not live and look in the mirror knowing that they lied to put somebody in there.
Yep.
Trying to make us cry, Jimmy.
No,
That
I mean,
was the fact that you're able to be at this point after everything you've been through and forgive is incredible. What an incredible human you are.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much
I see
for
something
sharing your
saying about the
story.
cash app.
Yes, yes. I'm happy you said that actually. Please tell us if people want to help support you, do any of that. Please
I
tell us
think,
how we can.
Lauren, do you have that information?
Your Cash App? I don't think so, but if you
Do
send it
you
to me, I
have
can send it.
All right, I'll make sure and get it to you.
Okay, I will for the audience, I will put that in the description box. We will put Cash App, GoFundMe, whatever it is that you guys send over, we will put that in there so that we can support you on this transition and this journey
Yeah,
that you are on.
yeah,
And
'cause law
again,
school, here I come.
yeah, congrats again on the insane accomplishment of going to law school. That's incredible. And thank you to Lauren also for the incredible work that you are doing, your organization is doing. We are planning to have you back very soon to have more conversations about this kind of stuff. So we
Yeah,
look forward to that. Thank you for your time, your story. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
yeah,
very
Thank
motivating.
you. I can't wait to come back.
All right. All
yeah.
right. What would Jimmy do? What a story. What a story.
I I'm a man's man. You understand me? I had to hold back tears
Yeah.
because
I can't even
to
imagine.
be found for the evidence to be as concrete as it was to benefit him,
Yeah.
people literally tossed him away.
Yes.
It was like, no, he's gonna go for his whole life.
Yeah.
That's 41 years, man.
42. You
42
keep discounted
years.
that year. He had 42. Give him all his credit.
Please.
I don't even have words for that. I always try to have words, but like I don't have words for that insane story. So thank you again to Jimmy Soto, one word, for coming on this podcast and sharing his story. Thank you to Lauren, his attorney, for sharing, and thank you to Halle Besna. Okay.
Yes.
Because the reason we even got connected with Lauren is because of Halle, friend of the pod. You guys know she's been
Mhm.
on here a number of times. We love her.
Thank you. Thank you.
And she connected me with her. And Lauren, as I was kind of saying at the end, Lauren has worked on a number of cases getting people exonerated. And we are planning to have her back because there's another case she worked on that when I was reading, I said, wait, what? You mean what? So that is also an insane story, and we intend to have her back. Thank you for watching, listening, for doing the work with us, the work we're trying to do. I hope that was an insightful podcast. I hope you left with something, child. All right. Until next time, we get to take us out in the new set. Until next time.
Court is adjourned. Hold on. Court is adjourned.